what are the various ways in which insects deal with highly variable abiotic environments? We're going to get to the biotic environments later on when we start talking about competition and predation and things like that. But for now, we're going to focus the conversation on the abiotic environment. And by this, I mean things that are determined by the external physical environment that the organisms occur in. And one of the things that's important to understand here is that variability, the heterogeneity in these abiotic conditions, occur at many different spatial and temporal scales. And so the effect of the physical environment on the distribution and abundance of organisms will depend on whether you're thinking about these at a large spatial scale or at a smaller spatial scale, and therefore the adaptations that organisms have to deal with these environments. So here's an example of variation in climate. And the climate is really driven by at least two different variables here, the average annual temperatures and the precipitation. And here you can see, probably something you've seen many times before, how different plant communities are adapted to different combinations of precipitation and temperature. Over here, notice that this axis is actually reversed, where high temperatures are over here and low temperatures are over here. These are hot climates, and these are dry areas compared to wet areas. So tropical rainforests have a high annual precipitation and high average annual temperatures. Deserts, on the other hand, have low amount of precipitation in them. And therefore, the life history characteristics of the plants that have evolved to take advantage or to survive in these particular areas are going to be very different between plants that can make it here versus plants that can make it here. And it's very hard for you to be a cactus or a succulent that is adapted to holding on to water and dealing with high temperatures to do well in these kinds of environments up here, and vice versa. Insects are faced with very similar kinds of things. You can't be everything. You can't have a plant that does well across all of these different things. In the same way, you can't be an insect that does really well across all of these different environments. So this is one type of heterogeneity of abiotic factors at a global scale. And this is actually how it plays out spatially. You've got tropical rainforests that are here in this middle part of the planet, and whereas you have deserts that are kind of in these subtropical areas where precipitation doesn't fall as much, but you're still in this middle equatorial zone that has a lot of direct sunlight and therefore the heat and so on. Variability can occur at smaller spatial scales too. Here you can see what happens. Warm, moist air rises in elevation and condenses to form clouds and precipitation, to form clouds along the sides of mountains. You get precipitation on one side of the mountain and you have a rain shadow on the other side. So at a much smaller scale, you can have these very heterogeneous patterns of temperature and precipitation. This one due to elevation here. So this really sets a physical template that organisms have to deal with. Here's another different kind of abiotic factor, and that is physical disturbance. Physical disturbances is basically the destruction of habitat, places where organisms can actually live. And these can be either natural or man-made, or actually created by people. Here's an example of kind of wildfires or wind throws or flooding events as examples of natural phenomena that create a disappearance of viable habitat. And here's some cases actually that show man-made heterogeneity in that, where here each one of these circles here is actually a center pivot irrigation that creates high moisture places where plants can grow, and this is where we do our agriculture, compared to very dry areas like this. Here's some examples of clear cuts. On the other hand, very different environments, forest closed canopy versus more barren shrubby areas as you get regeneration of vegetation. Here's an example of grazed versus ungrazed areas in a rangeland environment. So you can imagine that these create very different abiotic environments for the organisms that live there.